To answer the first question, which is from SOC Chapter 9, what role does culture play in strategic change and what role does it play in a firm's success? My answer is that the basic assumptions are the core of a company's culture. If a company is dedicated to strategic change, both current and future basic assumptions, must be clearly defined to direct the joint effort of cultural and strategic change toward a similarly well-defined measure of success. In reality, that's kind of the best I can do. When I was reading this book, it was hard to determine the point of each chapter, and I'll go into a little bit more detail and explanation. I can't even count the number of lists that I was being presented with, much less the content of said lists. And the content and those details are actually very important. This confusion is not unique to this chapter. There are many indistinguishable acronyms. In this chapter specifically, OCAI got its own bolded section, while MSAI was embedded within some other bolded section. And because I'm not familiar with the consulting world, I can't really differentiate between the two, and they have the same two last letters. This is not unique to this chapter, and I remember in chapter 1, I still can't tell the difference between an OC, OL, a OD, or an MAS, even now. I am being introduced to names of authors that are similarly indistinguishable to one another, but they also don't get devoted sections, so all these names are being interwoven with one another, further confusing me. Again, this is not unique to this chapter. There are also drop plot lines in a movie narrative device. There's the presentation of Chekhov's gun and the firing of Chekhov's gun. Something that is presented should have a payoff at the end. And if it doesn't have a payoff at the end, don't present it, and the vice versa. If it's presented, it better have a payoff. In this particular chapter, we were introduced with norms for lunch, and you expect there'd be a follow-up with those that took an extra 5 minutes for lunch. Maybe they get a comeuppance, or maybe that's just part of the company culture. But there's no such payoff. In the beginning of the chapter, and also in the answer I just provided, basic assumptions were the core of culture. But again, it wasn't really reinforced near the end of the chapter. So in summary, the lack of the point basically also means that there's no real call to action for me. I don't know what I'm supposed to do after reading this particular chapter or reading this entire book. This is not to say the book's bad, but I think I needed some rudimentary or even intermediate understanding of the consulting world in order to make real good use of this book, and I just don't have that. Now, we can contrast that with the second answer, which was much easier to arrive at a conclusion for. That question was, from 4DOE, sum up your definition expression of Discipline 3 and why should leaders engage in the practice of Discipline 3. So Discipline 3 is establishment of a good scorecard. And a good scorecard allows team members to quickly assess their individual contributions of the lead measures of performance. Are we really doing things right? And lead measures of effectiveness. Are we doing the right things? And what impact those two lead measures have on the lag measure, which is the wildly important goal. Leaders should engage in the practice of Discipline 3 because it creates a system of accountability. Which in turn promotes iterative self-improvement, which is good, as opposed to maintaining a status quo, which is bad because if you don't innovate, you die. For example, if I say that everyone needs to work overtime to increase productivity, the error rate may increase, ultimately lowering overall productivity. If I am not quantitatively measuring productivity, number of hours, error rate, or otherwise keeping a good scorecard, I am just throwing poop at the wall and seeing what sticks. Furthermore, without a scorecard, I cannot identify whom on my team should be considered for advancement because they're doing well, and whom needs additional coaching because the converse, they're not doing as well. Thank you.